Yes, I am. Think about the lessons that you've learned in your life. Who are the people who have taught you those, or what are the circumstances that have taught you those? Think about the important life lessons. What the things that have made you who you are. Where did that learning come from? And I'll write them down.
My mom.
Okay.
That's what I would say from my mother.
From coworkers.
Coworkers. All right.
Yes.
From
Friends.
movies.
What was that, Janet?
Movies.
Movies. Yeah. Is any in
Entertainment.
particular jump out to you?
Entertainment in general. Books.
Okay. Yeah.
Family.
Mhm.
Bible studies.
Okay.
Church
Sure.
in general.
Okay.
Children.
Children.
I learned lots from my kids. They had the interest I didn't have, so I got to learn lots of interesting things. Like Doctor
And even
Who.
grandchildren.
Right. We're always learning.
Teachers.
Hopefully, yeah.
Hopefully, yes, that's true. Take notice, we didn't start there. Why?
Yeah.
Just life in general.
Living.
Mistakes.
Mistakes.
That's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. You don't learn as much from successes, do you?
No.
No.
I mean, successes feel great, but you don't learn as much as you do from failures or mistakes.
Right.
Okay. Do you see any patterns in this list we've come up with?
I don't see father in there anywhere.
Now, was that just a reflection, or do you want me to add it?
Maybe we should have said parents.
Okay. Sure, we'll change that to parents.
Well, and grandparents too.
All right.
Yeah.
True.
Then we have to say spouse.
We don't have to, but if you want to,
Well,
you can.
True. True.
So I noticed that the majority of these are people, and they're people we have a relationship with, which is kind of interesting. There's a couple things that aren't, a couple things that are different, the movies, the church, but for the most part, these are people. And I wonder if that's why it took us a little while to get to teachers, because we don't tend to have the same level of relationship with teachers, or maybe we'll have a great relationship with a couple, but it's not generally as deep as some of these other relationships. Interesting.
I'd even like to make the case that movies are entertainment, and I think we don't have books, do we?
That was.
Do we not have books there?
Now we do.
I think movies, entertainment, books, those are kind of long distance relationships with people. They're not direct relationships, but they're relationships that we get through words or images, because they're done by other people.
Okay. All right, so let's keep this in mind as we go through. Does anybody have any shalom moments to share? I said last week that we'd ask if there are any shalom moments that you might have experienced this week. I
I heard Mary say shalom in church.
I was about to say that during when we shared the piece this past Sunday, there was one voice who shouted out shalom during the piece, and certainly the rest of you are welcome to join that voice if you'd like.
Okay.
All right, well, let's have a word of prayer and then we'll jump into the book. Oh God, we thank you for all of the learning that we have done. We thank you for sending us teachers in so many forms, professional teachers, as well as parents and spouses and children and grandchildren. And we thank you for those who create movies and entertainment and books in so many different ways. We thank you for these things that have given us knowledge and experience and wisdom. We pray that as we study your word today, that we might grow even deeper in our knowledge and wisdom of you. Pray all this through Christ. Amen.
Amen.
All right, so we're going to start on page 7, the Wilderness School. And the order of people I see on my screen for reading today is Kathy, Mary, Kim, Brenda, Joe, Janet, and June. So go in that order, and if you'd like to pass, that's just fine. So Kathy, could you read the first paragraph on page 7?
When would the wilderness instruction begin? God the teacher waited and waited for the teachable moment, a moment which came when the people grumbled about food. Yahweh responded by showering them with some edible substance called, what is it? Or manna.
Okay, well, take a look at this picture. What do you see in this picture? What's going on?
No, the people are happy that they got manna, looks like.
Yeah, and where's the manna?
On the
Those little
ground.
The
things
ground.
on the ground.
All those little things. Yeah. And where are they?
In the desert.
Uh-huh. You can see they're staying in tents.
Mhm.
And what a happy sunrise there is there.
Yes.
Unless I doodled that in my book. Does it have a smiley face in yours?
Yes.
Yes.
So he uses the phrase teachable moment. Is that a phrase that you're familiar with? Has everyone heard the phrase teachable moment?
Mhm.
How would you define that? What's a teachable moment?
That's,
It's when we're especially open to a new insight.
mhm.
Any other ways of defining that?
When something happens, good or bad, sometimes that's a teachable moment.
Mm-hmm. So it's connected to our openness. It's connected to some event of some sort. Mm-hmm. Can you think of any teachable moments that jump out at you from your experience, whether you were the person who learned or you were the person who taught someone?
I feel like using technology, like especially at work, I'd go ask a colleague how to do something on the computer, and then or I'd show them something and they'd show me like you don't realize other people do things differently on the computer than you do, and when you see someone else do something, you're like, well, how come I didn't know that? How come I never did it that way? And it looks so obvious when someone else does it, and you're like, well, I've been doing it the hard way, and now you're showing me an easier way. But they didn't really teach you. They just happened to do it, and you happen to see it, and then
Yeah.
you're like, oh wow, that's cool. Now I know how to do that. So
Yeah.
I remember a day one of my secretaries showed me that little icon you could tap on to reverse what you just did. Because I used to always go back and backspace and erase everything. Then I found this nifty little thing. You just start tapping it, you erase everything you did. It was great. Yeah.
Wouldn't it be nice if there were an undo button in life?
Absolutely.
Mary, we can see you now.
I know, I hit something, I don't
Yeah,
know.
well, you hit the right thing, whatever it was.
I guess I just had a teachable moment.
Exactly.
I taught myself.
Before we go any deeper into this chapter, I want to check in and see what we know about manna. When you hear the word manna, we're going to learn more about it as we go. But what do you know about manna?
Well, it was edible.
Okay. Yep, that's right.
And you can't take more than you need for the day.
Yeah, that's a big part of it.
It was on the ground longer than the 5-second rule.
I guess the 5-second rule doesn't apply to gifts directly from the Lord, I guess.
I
don't
guess
know.
not.
It was a gift.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
And it was also instruction because God would use it to teach the people how they should live once the manna stopped showing up.
And that's a lot about what we're
Yeah.
going to talk about for the rest of this
Yeah.
this session. Yeah. Okay. Did you know that the word manna literally means what is it? That's something I always like to teach our first communion classes. We always act this story out in first communion class, and I have the kids run around, picking up this stuff and saying, "What is it? What is it?" And then I say, "But they didn't say what is it because they spoke Hebrew, and in Hebrew that is manhu, manhu." So they're all running around saying manhu, manhu, and that's where the word manna comes from. So it's just it just means what is it?
What is it is in this cartoon in the middle of the page too.
Yeah, somebody's saying that. Yeah. And of course, if we had overheard them speaking the language they would have spoken, it would have sounded more like Manhu. So, okay, let's go on to the next paragraph. I think that's Mary.
The way God gave the manna and the way the people gathered it and shared it taught the people how to live as a special people on this earth. Here is what they learned. Shall I continue?
Yeah, you can continue.
Gee, thanks.
You can pass on to the next person at any point if you'd like.
Do I read one?
Yeah, that's a good
and then
question.
go
How
to
should we
the
do
next?
this? Let's
Right.
go. Let's read across. So let's read what
Okay.
happened and then
Okay.
what the partner people learned.
Okay.
So go ahead and read the first in each one there.
God provided the manna each day. All food is God's. In fact, everything is God's. We own nothing. We can trust God for our daily bread.
Okay.
You want to talk about that or should I continue?
Let's finish the whole thing unless somebody
Okay.
else has something you want to say.
The people gathered manna each day for their clan. Work is the dignified activity of helping God meet the needs of all people. Larger clans gathered more and smaller clans gathered less. All had enough and no one had too much. God gives daily food, so hoarding is unnecessary. Food is for all, not just the big deals or the deserving. God gives enough. All can therefore live in sufficiency with neither too much nor too little.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I wonder, when you hear some of these claims here of what the people learned, what's your reaction to hearing the sentence, "We own nothing"? What's your reaction hearing that or reading that?
I think we get everything from God. And, we just don't own anything. We're here on borrowed time.
Do you find that something you have to remind yourself of a lot, or is it easy to remember?
I have to remind myself, because I think we own it because we go out and pay for it. But if it wasn't for his grace and mercy, we wouldn't have, the ability to go out and buy things.
But the rest of you, we own nothing. How does that feel when you hear that?
It feels truthful.
Mm,
I understand that we own nothing. We came with nothing and we're leaving with nothing.
okay. How about the second claim? Work is the dignified activity of helping people meet the needs of all people. That's what work is. How does that strike you?
That he works through us. And we help each other.
And it transforms our understanding of our labor, of our job, because it's not just about earning the money we need to survive, but it's also something we're doing to help other people. You know, we work to eat, so to speak, because if we don't work, we're not going to have food, but we also work so that others can eat. You know, it's a mutual thing. We're in this mutually.
And I always think that work kind of gives us our dignity, that, you know, that people sometimes that, you know, I mean, there's people that can't work, but there's people that choose not to work. And I think that work gives you dignity, that, you know, you're earning what you have and you can share it.
Anything else? How about this in the last one? God gives enough.
More than enough sometimes.
And sometimes we don't want to share.
Yeah.
I'm not saying me, but you know, there. You know,
Well, I'll own
times
that. Sometimes I don't, and sometimes I don't remember this. Sometimes I don't. And in my personal experience, I find that I have the hardest time trusting that God's going to give enough when it comes to time.
I don't know. I guess I find this statement harder to, I guess, to really come to terms with than that we don't own anything. I feel like I personally have enough, but I feel like there's so many people in the world that don't have enough. And I believe God, you know, I believe that God loves us, and I know that God isn't gonna make it easy, but I just feel like there's some people in our country and other countries that are starving to death, and I don't really feel that like I personally have done something to like deserve not to be in the same situation. I was just lucky enough, I guess, to be born where I was, but I don't know. I don't know how to come to terms with this, that there are people in the world that really just don't have enough food or enough water. And you know, we try to do stuff to help, but I feel like God isn't giving everyone enough, and I don't know how to deal with that.
I think God gives us the ability, and then the choice is up to us. Those people choose probably not to go out and work. And there's so many of them today not wanting to work. I mean, stores are closing for the day because their deliveries are overwhelming them. They just don't have enough help. People don't want to work.
I think that's true for some people, but there are also millions, perhaps billions of people in the world who don't have enough to eat, despite, you know, their desire to work.
And sometimes it has nothing to do with work or people. I just saw this on 60 Minutes the other night on Mozambique, how they have no water, no water. It has constantly been disappearing for the past 3 years. And what they have to do to get the tiniest bit of dirty water to drink. And I think that's a challenge for us who have more.
There's a
than we
lot
have.
of countries that have to walk miles for clean
They
water.
have to walk. They have
Yeah.
to walk 10 miles to get
And
water.
that mostly happens in third world.
And they're also
countries.
starving. They're also
Yes,
starving.
definitely.
I had to look up where Mozambique was off the coast of Africa, where, you know, they have all kinds of problems. But I think that's meant as a challenge to the rest of the people in the world to help these people.
Yeah, God doesn't work by simply providing everything by
No.
magic to people, but God has given the command that people are to share. And there's incredible economic disparity in the world. I mean, it's just when you think of some people not having enough to eat or not having water to drink, and you think about some of the billionaires who complain about their taxes being too high, and I just scratch my head because some of those same people I hear complaining about it, you know, claim to be religious people. And I don't get that. I just don't understand that. You know, there's so much that so many people of wealth can share, and yet some of them are just so hyped up about having several houses and yachts and airplanes and everything else. And then they profess belief in God, and I don't get it. Well, I guess they believe in some God. I don't think they believe in the God of the Bible, because the God of the Bible obviously has said, you know, everyone should have enough and no one should have too much. I mean, that's
Yeah,
the way God wants it. And we failed to order the world in such a way that that happens.
Mhm.
It's even with governments, like some of the communist countries, the leaders have everything and their people are starving and have nothing. They live in poverty.
And I personally, you know, own this myself. You know, to me, I consider myself to be extraordinarily wealthy because I've never wondered where my next meal's coming from. And, you know, I don't have multiple houses, I don't have yachts, but every time I order something on Amazon that I really don't need, you know, I wonder, and I feel, and I get a pang of guilt that, you know, this, you know, $100 Lego set I'm buying for myself, should that money have gone instead to feed somebody? You know, I find that to be a real challenge. Yeah, so this is a hard one. This is a hard one.
it is.
Because because clearly not everyone has enough right now. So if God gave enough, then it has something to do with the way it's distributed. And that's hard for me anyway. All right, we're going to take a little jump out of the book here and take a look at something Martin Luther wrote in the Small Catechism. I'm going to bring up, let's see if we can get this started. Let's stop that. Okay. All right, this is Martin Luther's explanation of the fourth petition of the Lord's Prayer. The fourth petition is, "Give us today our daily bread," or "Give us this day our daily bread." And in Martin Luther's Small Catechism, he starts everything by saying, "What is this?" or "What does this mean?" It's a translation of "Was ist das?" So what does this mean? Luther says, in fact, God gives daily bread without our prayer, even to all evil people. But we ask in this prayer that God cause us to recognize what our daily bread is and to receive it with thanksgiving. And then Luther asked the question, well, what does this daily bread mean? And he answers this way: everything included in the necessities and nourishment for our bodies, such as food, drink, clothing, shoes, house, farm, fields, livestock, money, property, an upright spouse, upright children, upright members of the household, upright and faithful rulers, good government, good weather, peace, health, decency, honor, good friends, faithful neighbors, and the like. So how would you describe Luther's understanding of what bread means? Is it a narrow view or a wide view, or how would you describe it?
It's a wide view.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, very wide.
I guess
So-
he means that daily bread is something that God gives us to live each day, what we need. He gives us what we need to live.
Yeah, that's a good definition of it. Yeah, it's and it's a lot more than just, you know, physical, literal bread. I can remember this you know, Luther wrote the Small Catechism in German, and it's been translated into English a couple times over the centuries. And one of my professors at seminary was one of the ones who did the most recent translation, and he was very proud of himself that he got the word shoes back in the English, because apparently the last translation didn't have the word shoes here, but he said Luther said shoeing, and he just thought that was really important, that God even gives us shoes. So yeah. Now, when I had first communion class over the last few weeks, this is one of the things that I kind of taught the kids there, that you know, that everything we have comes from God. You know, I asked them, you know, what's your favorite thing to eat? Most of them said mac and cheese. And I asked them, where does the mac and cheese come from? And we kind of traced it back, that you know, it came from the store, and it came from the bakery, and it came from the dairy farm, and, you know, all the way back, and eventually it all came to God. And that group of kids really really was able to grasp that pretty quickly, I think. Do you think this is something that it's easier for kids or adults to grasp, that everything comes from God?
I think adults need to hear it a little more.
Mm. I think
Reminders.
this is easier for kids. I really do. And I think part of it is because they, in their experience, everything they have is a gift. You know, kids who, at least kids who have loving parents, which is certainly all the ones in my recent class, they don't have to worry about things. You know, they complain that they don't have everything they want, maybe, but it's all given to them, which is the way it should be for kids. And I think Luther would remind us here, and so would Erlander, and so would God, that that's true for us as adults too, that everything is given to us. It's hard to remember.
Mhm.
Relate this bit of the Small Catechism back to where we began about teachable moments.
Yep.
You know, the story is told that when Luther asked the question, what is this? He got that from his child, who was
That's right.
running around the house saying, was ist das? Was ist das? Was ist das? What is this? The child kept pointing things, saying, what's this called? What's this called? So Luther learned to put that simple question into his catechism from his child.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool. So yeah,
Thank
children
you.
run around asking questions. They want to grow, they want to
Oh,
learn.
yeah. Okay. Well, let's go back to the book. We're on page 8 now, and we'll read that top paragraph and the level 2 or lesson 2 box there. So whose turn is it? Kim, I guess.
Mine, yeah. God taught the second lesson when some of the people decided to hoard manna. Evidently, they were attracted to the old Pharaoh's Egypt belief that having a pile of manna makes one a big deal and brings happiness. Their hoarded manna grew maggots and spoiled. Lesson 2, hoarding stinks. What happened? Some people hoarded God's manna. The manna they kept grew maggots and smelled foul. What the partner people learned, the Pharaoh's Egypt way of accumulating, piling up, brings rot, decay, and death.
Okay. So what was the teachable moment here that prompted this lesson?
Oh, they kept the manna longer than they should, and then
Yep.
They hoarded it.
And the way the story is told in Exodus, God told the people to go out and collect it every morning and not to keep extra, but didn't tell them what the consequence would be. So when some of them tried it, they found out the consequence. What are some reasons people might have done this anyway? Why do you think they would have kept some overnight?
I guess they were afraid they wouldn't have enough. They didn't trust the Lord.
Fear, lack of trust? Any other ideas?
I think experience too, when they were in the desert traveling, they've already experienced like hunger. So they know what it felt like to be hungry. And so I think it's easier to trust when things are going well and harder to trust when they're not going well. It should be the opposite, but I think it's easier to trust in God when you have what you need. And then when you don't, it's harder to trust that things are going to get better.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if some people hoarded it simply because they wanted to have more than their next door neighbor.
Could
They
be.
just wanted to be able to say, look at what I've got. My pile's bigger than yours.
Mhm.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they wanted to sell some and make a profit too.
There you go.
Could be.
Yeah, this is a great business opportunity. This can't last forever, but if I get it all now.
I'm-
Mm-hmm.
So there's lots of reasons, fear, lack of trust, greed.
Greed.
Mhm. Yeah. Does this still happen today?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
At
just
the
had it happen
pandemic,
with
when people were
happened.
hoarding
Right.
sanitizer and toilet
toilet
paper.
paper.
Similar reasons too, wasn't it? A lot of times when hoarding happens, it's about fear.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, depending on the situation, there are sometimes when that fear, that panic is what causes the shortage, that it wouldn't have been a problem if people
Right.
hadn't all reacted that way.
Imagine if some people had rushed out to collect the manna and some people got there first and grabbed it all and ran, then there'd be some who didn't have any.
Mhm.
God would have provided enough for everybody, but some people would have taken more than their share, and then other people would have gone hungry.
Right. Right.
So if the hoarded manna grew maggots and smelled foul, what are the symptoms of this same impulse today? What happens today when we hoard in this way?
Others go without, and then we find out we have too much.
I don't think the stuff in this case grows foul, but I think something happens inside you when you know that you've taken more than you need and other people are without. I think it starts to eat at you. And well, I mean, anybody with a conscience, I guess, or a good conscience, it starts to eat at you that you've done something that you probably shouldn't have done, and it starts to make you more like decaying inside or something.
Saw a lot of heads nodding during that. Does that sound right to the rest of you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
It's not. I like the connection with decay, because what happens to the manna is it decays and it turns into death. And that's maybe that's a metaphor for what happens within us.
I feel like, I don't know. I'm in that position. I know a lot of you were retired. I know that, I retired, but Jim didn't. But I feel like, you know, I'm trying to make sure we have enough. I feel almost a little guilty that I'm not working and Jim's still working. And do we have enough? And have we saved enough for retirement? So, like, I don't feel like anything I'm saving is affecting like other people, like it's denying other people. But I feel like it's hard when you read some of this stuff, like, well, don't hoard and don't take, don't take more than you need, because like you're trying to plan for, I don't know, am I trying to plan for 10 years? Am I trying to plan for 30 years? Am I trying to plan for 40 years? And I don't want to be a burden to my kids if I can't, like, have enough money to live, but you don't know. So that uncertainty is hard. And, you keep trying to say, okay, well, I'll do the best that I can. And I'm sure a lot of you have gone through that because you're trying to make sure that you have what you need. So you read some of this stuff that says, well, don't worry, don't hoard. But I feel like if we don't save stuff, we still have to have money to live. So, but I feel like, I shouldn't run out and buy all the things that are in the store and keep someone else from buying them. But yeah. So I don't know. I think sometimes it's hard to read some stuff in the Bible and you want to try to do the right thing and you want to try to trust in God, but you also see circumstances around you where people don't save or don't put stuff away, and then they can't make ends meet. And so
Well, I think, Kim, I think you're being responsible about your future. You don't want to be, you don't want to have to depend on the government to feed you. So you're being responsible. And I don't think you should feel like you're hoarding.
Well, I think planning for the future and financial planners, I think that just came into being within the past, I'd say 75 years. I know my parents, they couldn't plan for their future.
I don't think they had the
First of
money
all,
to
they
plan.
didn't have the money to plan for a future. This is something that we've come up with when people have become more affluent, have had good jobs where they could save money and
And there's, two
That's
people
not a
working
problem.
in the family.
I think, yes, two people working had a lot to do
Yeah.
with it also. But not everybody can do that.
It's also a function of the fact we're living longer.
That's very
I mean,
true.
let's face it, it used to be mom and dad had died when they were 60 or 65. Now mom and dad aren't going to die till they're 95.
That's
I mean, so
very
you
true.
could easily take your parents in and take care of them for the last few years of their life. Now it's a whole different story. So I think there's a difference between hoarding and planning for the future. I mean, hoarding would be saying, well, I'm going to keep everything I make for myself, so I have a really, really, really good future. There needs to be a mix, I think, of both sharing and planning for the future. That's a
Gotta be a
tough,
good balance.
yeah, and that's a tough call, because I've often said, if I knew how long I was going to live, it would be easy to plan financially for the future. If I lived out, I'm only 75, I'm dead in 2 years. If I lived 105, I got 30 years more to go. So it'd be much simpler if you knew that, but you don't.
Mhm.
This is a situation where the rubber hits the road. This is where the lessons we learn in Scripture, we have to apply them, because these lessons are probably still good for us, but we don't have the same lifestyle that the ancient Israelites did, and we need to figure out how they apply to us now. And it's hard. It's hard.
The commandment, honor your father and mother, in the ancient world meant when your mom and dad get old, continue to take care of them.
Yep.
I mean, that was the understanding back then. Things are different now, because, as I said, mom and dad would die earlier. You didn't take care of them so long. So there wasn't the pressures there are now. So
And there also wasn't nuclear families the way there are now. I mean,
Yes, that's right.
the
Yeah.
family would be, you know, the kids, the parents, the grandparents, an aunt and uncle, the cousin, you know, you were all living together and,
Right.
and you took care of one another. You know, that's
And
not.
the Amish still do it that way.
Mhm.
The Amish do not pay Social Security taxes because they don't believe in accepting Social Security, because they say, we will take care of our own in their old age. They continue to do it, but it needs that kind of close-knit community to take care of them. And society as a whole just doesn't have that kind of close-knittedness anymore.
Mhm. Mhm.
Well, and as Americans, I feel like we're not used to having shortages of things. I mean, when you go back to the
Oh.
70s and there was gas short, like I can remember that as a kid, my mom waiting in gas lines, and you could only get gas on like either if your license plate ended on the odd number or the even number, and you could only go to the gas station the day you were supposed to. But other than that, like other than the 70s, like in my lifetime, you know, there really hasn't been a shortage of things. So now with the pandemic, where there's shortages of toilet paper, there's shortages of there was a shortage this summer on pool chlorine, like, you know, so we're just not used to that. But I know, you know, people that lived through World War II, you know, they remember shortages, but I'm not, you know, I didn't live through that. So I feel like, you know, I feel if you live where there's shortage of things more consistently, you're kind of used to it. You don't overreact. You don't maybe try to hoard as much, but you know, now when we're not used to that and all of a sudden there's shortages of stuff, everybody's like, well, I got to get out there and get all I can because there's not going to be any of it. Like, I mean, there's always going to be someone that hoards no matter what. Like, but I feel like, you know, if it's something that happens more frequently, then you don't react as strongly, I think, because you're just, it's not a surprise or you're already kind of used to it. And we're just,
This is where having a
used to
real
it.
sense of history is important, to understand that it's a modern phenomenon, that there are at least some people in this world who never have had shortages, like you're saying, Kim. I mean,
Right.
you know, we need to remember that, you know, the world for the most part has always experienced this, and we're very fortunate. We're extremely been very fortunate. You know, I remember asking my mother, you know, how they lived through the Depression. And she said, well, they were fortunate. They lived on a farm, so they didn't feel the effects of the Depression as much because they had at least the food right there. So they didn't have to worry about their food. They had the milk the cows and the chickens that kill and all that stuff. But she said a lot of people outside of farms, for them, it was really rough, you know, to have that understanding that these times have come before us, I think is very helpful. We need to appreciate that, appreciate what we have.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, like it's not as bad if you put it in perspective with history and you realize what other people had to go through and what they had to, you know, what they were short of or what they couldn't be able to do, or like you think it's bad when it's happening to you, but
Mhm,
when you
mhm.
realize other people had it a whole lot worse, it's not that bad.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay, let's finish up this page.
Yahweh, the creator and liberator and teacher, had one more great lesson to share with the students of the wilderness school, the meaning of Sabbath. Yahweh wanted the partner people to receive this beautiful gift of rest and refreshment, this gift of time to enjoy fully what life is all about, friendship with God and others and nature. The gift of Sabbath. What happened? No manna fell on the seventh day of the week. Enough manna fell on the sixth day to feed the people on both the sixth day and the seventh day. The manna stored for the Sabbath did not rot. What the partner people learned. Humans do not have to work every day to receive and distribute God's manna. The extra time is a beautiful gift of God, which makes it possible for humans and animals and earth to rest. Sabbath allows humans to experience full-time the wonder of friendship with God and others and all creation.
Okay, thank you. I want to start by looking at the first line here, where it says Yahweh, the creator and liberator and teacher. Now, 2 weeks ago, in chapter 1, Yahweh was described as the creator. Last week, another word was added, liberator. And this week, the word teacher is added. Which of these three words resonates most with you when you think of God? Creator, liberator, or teacher?
Creator.
Creator. Why do you think that is?
Because that's what we
Because
learned. that
from the
God
very
created
beginning, we're taught
everything.
that God created the earth and everything on it.
And it's a little less intuitive to think of God as a teacher or as a liberator.
Yeah.
There have been people over the centuries who have thought that God was kind of like a clockmaker, that who designed the universe, set it up, and then walked away and let it go about its business. And I think sometimes we act as though that's the case, even if we don't. We wouldn't say we believe that if we thought it through, but sometimes we find it harder to remember that God is with us all the time, and God is continuing to teach and liberate. Okay. Another word that Erlander uses here is the word friendship. What does friendship mean to you? How would you define that?
People that you know and trust.
Okay. So you have to know someone and trust them. That's part of it. Okay. How else would you define friendship?
Someone to have fun with,
Mm-hmm.
to laugh and stuff.
Someone to share with.
Share. Okay.
Someone who's there for you in good times and bad,
Mhm.
like God. Well, isn't there a song about having a friend in Jesus?
Mm-hmm.
I guess God is our best friend.
There used to be a license plate about having a friend in Pennsylvania, I think.
Mhm.
So Erlander describes that's what the Sabbath is about friendship with God and with others. So what has been your experience with the word Sabbath? What does Sabbath mean to you when you hear that?
To me, it's worshiping the Lord.
Worship is part of it. Okay.
A holy day.
Holy day.
Well, I don't know if you remember this or not, but I recall debating with my son what the Sabbath was. We had a debate over whether it was Sunday or whether it was Friday to Saturday. That was a
Well, I
long
think-
time ago. You may not remember it, Michael.
We had actually just a couple weeks ago in confirmation class, we had that discussion.
Oh, really?
So yeah.
Well, I think the Jews, don't they celebrate the Sabbath on Saturday?
Mm-hmm. Friday evening to Saturday. It was Friday sundown to Saturday sundown. Yep.
But doesn't it mean also a day of rest?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And years ago, stores were closed on Sunday, not so much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a store in Easton, Hobby Lobby, They're closed on Sunday so their employees can share the Sabbath with their
And
families.
Chick-fil-A.
Mhm.
And Chick-fil-A, oh, yeah.
We had a member, an older member of our congregation that was in one of our women's group years ago. And she always encouraged us not to go shopping on Sunday. Always, and I'll never forget it. I mean, I feel a little bit guilty if I go in any stores on Sunday. She was a real member of the Lutheran world, no, the Lutheran women.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I remember years ago, my grandmother was in a hospital in Baltimore. And I guess at that point, we were living up near Hazleton. And I went down to see her on a Sunday afternoon. I left after church. And I wore the clergy collar so I could cheat my way into the hospital to make sure I could see her. You know, the collar helps you get in sometimes, you know, and I thought if I drive this distance, that means everything I can to get in. Well, anyhow, I had the collar on and still had it on when I was driving back, and I stopped somewhere near York and got gas. And that was in the day when they pumped your gas for you. Well, the young man pumping my gas with this long apology about, oh, I know I shouldn't work Sunday, Pastor. And I thought, oh my God, it was really interesting, you know, that, you know, I didn't care that he worked Sunday, you know, so what? I could have gotten gas otherwise, couldn't have made my trip, you know, but he was in an area of the state where that was still strong for a lot of people, that sense of not working on a Sunday, you know. The Lutheran, his catechism doesn't even deal with whether it's Sunday or not. He just emphasizes the importance of rest and worship. He's not real concerned about the day of the week, which I always found helpful in our contemporary world.
And I have always found it helpful in my career because
True.
Sunday's not a Sabbath for me. You know?
Friday is your Sabbath.
Yeah. In my
And
in my
there
life,
are
I
some-
take Friday off, and
Yeah, there are some professions that have to work on a Sunday, the police, the fire department, hospital workers.
Mhm.
You know.
yeah, and I think that's what's most important about the Sabbath is not about, you know, legalistically following a particular, you know, day of the week, but making sure that that you find time to rest and time to be with God and in community. And Erlander uses the word friendship here to describe that. Take a look at the picture on the top of page 9. That's it's labeled the gift of Sabbath.
Even the ox is happy.
Yeah, what do you think
They
about
are.
that? The ox says this is a
Yes.
great day for oxen.
Mm.
Why is it a great day for oxen?
The animals get to rest one day.
Yeah, because that ox, you know, would be pulling a plow 6 days a week,
Yeah.
and on Sunday the animals got to rest too.
What's happening? Nothing.
Yeah,
Yeah. God just wants us to rest, regroup, re-energize.
Sometimes it's hard to do nothing.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What would you do with the gift of more time? Of course, I'm asking a bunch of retired people here. Maybe
I
you're
was
not the
just
people
going
to
to
ask
say, I'm
that.
not so sure asking retired people what to do with more time. I mean, that's not an issue with us, at least not with me. I know some people have told me that in retirement, they have less time than they ever had. And I think that's just because you're doing more. That's got nothing to do with,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
I mean,
and you
people
also
tell
get
me-
to do the things you want.
Yeah.
You know, it's not that we're doing more. It's just that we don't have to do the things we used to do.
And it takes us longer to do the things we need to do.
Well, that's true. It does take us longer.
So
When
that
I was a
makes-
very young pastor, I never understood the older people who told me how long it took them to get moving in the morning. 40 years later, I finally understand what they were telling me.
Sometimes I say I'd like to get a part-time job, but I don't have the time.
Me too.
And even then, I think it's important to make sure you're making time to rest. You know, if you're able to be active in retirement and be busy, that's great. If that's what you want to do, but
I think
but not all week.
you need to be busy when you retire. You know, keep active
Mhm.
and you stay young that way. But for me, resting is just sitting at this kitchen table, watching TV and working on a craft, whether it be crocheting or writing out cards for the military. That's how I rest. Sometimes I take a nap.
That's true.
I'm not sure I agree with those little prairie dogs that what's happening is nothing, because I think what's happening is recreation.
Mm.
Some people are laying down, they're spending time with their family, they're enjoying the sunshine, some people are singing. So things are happening, just not with the same hecticness that they may occur during work days. Because I think the Jewish understanding of Sabbath, even to this day, is it's a time for family, it's a time, you know, to just hang loose, but to do that in a way that nurtures your spirit.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
And
That-
years
that's an
ago, I
important
think we
part
used
of
to
it.
do that. Yeah, I remember always going to our grandparents' house for dinner every Sunday. Not so much today.
What gets in the way today?
Life.
Well, how so? What makes it harder today than it might have been before?
More things to do, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the
we're-
traveling is harder.
Mm-hmm.
Like in some families, once the grandparents die, they were the glue that held the family together, and now they're no longer here. And people sort of just go their own way.
But now we're the grandparents.
Yeah. And
We're
and
the
I live too
grandparents.
far from them to come every Sunday.
So we're supposed to be doing the cooking on Sunday
Right.
for family
I
dinner.
do, just not for them.
and some activities never take time off. I mean, sports now happen all over the place. I remember when I was in the Hazleton area, the pastor of Christ Lutheran Church in Hazleton told us a story about one of his teenage members who kind of rebelled against the coach of his high school baseball team when the coach said, you have to come to practice Sunday morning. And this young man kind of stood up to him and said, no, I go to church on Sunday mornings. But for some people, it's just another day to do stuff. I also remember once reading an article by somebody who said, our society as a whole needs a day of Sabbath. And because we're so different in religious beliefs, maybe it should be like a Tuesday, which is associated with nobody's holy day, and just everything closes down. Yeah. I mean, it's not going to happen, I'm afraid, but it was an interesting concept that society as a whole just needs to stop and not do for a day once a week. It'd just be a good thing, regardless of the religion attached to it.
And I think to me, you know, it's upon us to teach society that, you know, it's you know, I think we talked earlier about how we live in a very unique time, that we're not used to shortages and that sort of thing. We've also spent time in a very unique time, which is that in the second half of the 20th century, our culture made things so easy on the church in a way that it never used to be, and in a way that it's not now. And you know, I think sometimes when I hear people saying, you know, they shouldn't have sports on Sundays because kids should be going to church, my response is usually, well, the families ought to be saying what that family did in Hazleton. You know, that it's not the sports team responsibility to help us, you know, worship God. It's our responsibility to make the priority worshiping God. And that's following the Sabbath is harder than it used to be. And sometimes we get upset about that, thinking that you know, the world around us ought to be making our lives easier, but maybe we were looking in the wrong place for that freedom. Enough of that soapbox.
Well, but I could never do it, but I have a lot of admiration for Orthodox Jews who literally sundown Friday to sundown Sunday, they won't drive their car.
Yep.
I mean, it's amazing. They walk to synagogue. They don't drive. So yeah, it's really remarkable what they do. My hat's off to them, although I don't think I'd have the patience to do it.
So let's read through we'll read through the paragraph and then all the bulleted points to those big words there.
All right, I guess that's me. I think I'm after Brenda.
I think so.
Yahweh asked the people to carry a jar of manna with them and to keep the jar when they settled down. This precious jar of manna would remind them of the lessons they had learned in the wilderness school. We own nothing, all is God's, all is gift. God gives enough for all to be shared by all. Hoarding causes rot, it stinks. Work is helping God distribute manna, the gift God promises to all. God gives rest so humans can practice full-time what life is all about. Friendship with God, friendship with others, friendship with nature.
Okay. So there's a legend that that jar of manna was carried around in a box that also contained the mummified remains of Joseph, who was the son of Jacob, who brought all the Israelites down to Egypt many generations earlier. Well, when Joseph died, he said he did not want his bones buried in Egypt. He wanted them buried in Canaan. So the legend is that they carried those bones back with them, along with this jar of manna, and they were both placed in something called the Ark of the Covenant. But whether there's truth to that legend or not, the idea there is that these were mementos that the people carried around to remind them of important things. Because once they got back to the promised land, the manna stopped. The manna was not going to be, forever. It was for this journey. But what do you think God wanted them to remember by keeping that jar?
That all things come from him.
Mm-hmm.
That they were taken care of
Mm-hmm.
all the time with that.
To share.
Mm-hmm.
They have to have faith in him and trust him.
So all those lessons that they had learned through the manna in the wilderness, they were asked to hold on to this as a reminder of those. Do you have any mementos that you keep as a way to remind yourself of something, of a lesson that you might have learned? Or
I imagine I still have it somewhere in the closet of my bedroom, which is quite a mess, but somewhere in there's a rock that comes from the playground across from the house where my grandmother lived in Baltimore. And I've always valued that because it always reminds me of her and her house.
Yeah.
I brought back water from the Sea of Galilee in a bottle and had it on the shelf for quite a while, but that's been so long ago that I decided I better just get rid of it. It didn't look like it was turning into anything else though. But that was a great reminder.
I had the driver's license of the grandfather I never knew. My paternal grandfather died when my dad was 10.
Wow.
So of course I never knew him. It's a long story as to how this license eventually came to me. I won't go into all that, but I was quite moved by that because it has his signature there. So this man who would have been a very important part of my life had he lived, I have that one little piece of him, so to speak. So that's kind of a nice tie to the past for me.
I think we all have pictures and momentums, nothing that I carry with me, but dishes that belong to relatives.
We carry our memories, I think, with us.
speaking of shortages and hoardings, I have, my mother always made me keep the ration
Mm.
books that they had during the war, because each child got one with their name on it, I believe, for sugar or flour, or, it was for certain things. And I still have that.
So taking a look at these bulleted points in the middle of the page, which of them do you find easiest to remember? And the next question is going to be, which do you find hardest? So let's so what do you find, which one's pretty easy for you to kind of hold on to and remember?
All is God's.
Okay.
We own nothing.
Mm-hmm.
God gives enough for all to be shared by all.
Okay.
To me, it's sharing. I mean, I like to share.
You do. You're a good sharer.
Thank you.
Yes.
To me, the hardest is not hoarding. I mean,
Okay.
just this morning, I said to my husband, I have too many clothes. And he agreed with me.
You're going to
Yeah,
have to take more back to the store.
Something I find so amazing. I walk past the clothing shed, just about every day. And apart from the fact that every now and then there's a run where people are just dumping trash there, but that's been good for the last few weeks. But every single week that shed is filled with clothing. There are always people dropping stuff off. The truck comes every Tuesday to empty it out, and it's full every week. And on top of that, every time we have a rummage sale,
Right.
we are overloaded with clothing. Like it continues to just blow my mind that the amount of clothing in this area is astounding to me.
Yes.
So what's the hardest here for you to remember? Like Mary shared that. What about the rest of you?
I don't find them hard to remember. I find them hard to do.
Okay, well, all right. What do you find the hardest to do? Good
Well,
rephrasing.
Wow. I'm not sure which would be hardest, but they're all difficult at times.
Okay.
Probably distributing the manna.
Yeah, I think that's a hard one for a lot of us to remember too. I think the church is really good about talking about vocation when we're talking about people who work for the church. We're really good about saying that I don't have a job, I have a call. In fact, I don't have a signed contract with this church. I have a signed letter of call with this church, which means that what I'm doing is God's work. What we should be better at is talking about how all of our work is vocation. All of our work is God's work in the world, whether or not our check is signed by the treasurer of a church or not. And I think it's easy for us to not think that the work that we do is there to make a difference in the world. Our work is not there just to give us the paycheck so we can have a nice weekend. It's also to make a difference in the world. And I look around this call here and I think about the jobs that each of you have had. And I hope that you recognize that you made a difference in the world in those jobs. And I think we need to get better at talking about that. Okay, let's read the last paragraph.
God poured out manna day after day, dreaming of a universal manna society, a world where all receive, thank, and share. Yahweh dreamed of a world where there were no big deals and little deals, no rich and poor, no oppressors and oppressed, where humans live in harmony with all creation, each part living for the good of the whole. Yahweh dreamed of shalom, a mended universe.
And all the people were happy all the time in this journey, right?
Wrong.
No,
Sounds like heaven.
No. They were happy sometimes, but boy, did they continue to grumble. Boy, did they continue to complain. They threw tantrums sometimes. Moses tried to keep them together, but sometimes Moses threw tantrums. I'm hesitant to say that God threw tantrums, but God certainly got angry sometimes too. That's, you know, we read through Exodus and especially Numbers, and there's stories over and over again. And and my favorite part is when the Israelites complained, "There's nothing to eat out here, and we hate this terrible food." Like, think that through. You know, they like to find ways to complain. And so do you think God's dream came true? Do you think God was crazy to have this dream?
I don't think he's crazy to have this dream, but it definitely isn't true yet.
What gets in the
Still in
way of this dream
progress.
today? I'm sorry, June, what?
Still in progress.
Yeah. Yeah, what gets in the way? You know, it's been thousands of years now. What keeps getting in the way, do you think?
We do.
We
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
I sometimes think we do because we still haven't learned these lessons. I think if we somehow would learn the lessons of manna,
Yeah.
it would be better. Do you see glimpses of this dream coming true though, ever?
for every time I see someone doing something for someone else, that's a glimpse of Manna.
Yeah.
People who live in a way that's helpful. I mean, simple things you can start to see, like you know, when you're walking down the sidewalk, you come to the intersection and the car stops and they smile at you and wave you across the road. I mean, think about that. Is there someone who's noticing me? Who says, it's okay, I can stop, you go first. You know, it may seem like a simple thing, but it shows a sense of corporateness, a source of social concern, of concern for the other person.
When I was going to work down at the Synod office, and I would go the back way. I would go through Nazareth down that way, and on the stop sign at the stop sign by the library every morning, there was this older gentleman who would stand there and he would wave and say good morning to every car that passed,
Wow.
no matter
Wow.
which direction.
Oh,
No matter
gosh.
which direction you were going, was there waving and saying good morning. I admired that man.
Yes, yes.
You think that was a glimpse of God's dream coming true?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I miss that now because I don't
Yeah.
go to work anymore.
And if you went out and stood on your road and did that, I'm not sure it would have the same effect.
Probably
So,
not. No.
It probably
probably
said,
just
"Who's that
scare people
crazy
because there's no
lady?"
sidewalk there and think they,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
It might though. On a road I live on, well, on a road I travel on, there's an older gentleman that sits in one of those little utility vehicles that he has on his property. I don't think he can walk like very far because I've seen a walker on their porch and he sits in this thing all day long. I'm not sure I could sit in one little vehicle all day long, but he parks it facing the road and he waves at every car that goes by because he's in the vehicle and you're in a vehicle. You can't hear him say hello. But I walk a lot or have been walking a lot the last year. And, you know, in warmer weather, he has his window down and he'll, you know, he sits a lot. And I don't know. I think it's just nice. Like, and I see a lot of people, you know, stop and say hello. Well, most people don't stop, but they'll wave at them, and people that walk by will say hello. So I think it's nice. Like, we don't always take the time to say hello to other people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We should be like the motorcyclists. They put their hands out when they pass each other.
Oh,
We should wave to each other as we drive by each other.
Done.
yeah, wouldn't that be something? And you know, it seems so simple. It seems so little, but
I
if
often wondered what they would do if I waved to them, even though I'm not on a motorcycle. You know, why do they only acknowledge each other? I guess it's that brotherhood.
Camaraderie.
Mhm.
I think some people who own certain vehicles have that. I think people who drive VW Beetles like honk at each other and stuff like that too. But
Jeeps are the same way.
Jeeps are the same way, yeah. But
Oh,
but you know, I'd be
Mhm.
curious. You know, what would happen if you waved to them? You know,
I
out.
think that should be our homework. Let's try it.
Wave to a motorcycle this week.
Well, or even another driver in a car.
if you know, it says here, what life is all about is friendship with God, friendship with others, and friendship with nature. If that's what it is, then maybe that's probably not the whole answer to the world's problems, but maybe that's a small thing we can do.
Right.
True.
Sheriff does that. He waves to everybody when he's outside.
Yeah.
And one time a car stopped and he said, "Do I know you?" And Sheriff said, "No."
There was a
And they
police
waved back.
officer in the city of Reading in the 1950s and 60s who would literally dance as he directed cars through intersections.
Oh, that's
Even
great.
made the national news. But I mean, you could see this guy loved his job and he brought joy to people because it was just you. It was, I forget how he did it, but it was just he turned this very regular, ordinary, routine job into a delight.
Yeah.
It was wonderful.
I've seen that on the news years ago.
Yeah.
Well, it's about that time. We should wrap up. Any last reflections, questions, comments?
Could I share something with
Yes.
everyone? I don't know if anyone had problems with carpenter bees like I did, but I'd read someplace if you take a brown paper bag and fill it up with just plastic bags and hang it on your porch, the bees think it's a hornet's nest and they stay away.
Wow.
Wow.
That's brilliant.
I mean, the carpenter bees did so much damage to our deck, but this works.
Wow. Great.
Cool.
And it's a nice solution that it doesn't harm anything in the process.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and that's my lesson for the day.
Yeah,
Tune
thank you.
in next week. What else I could have?
And that's friendship with nature, right?
Yeah,
there.
absolutely.
You're not
Absolutely.
using
That's
chemicals and
right.
pesticides.
Yeah.
Good job.
Anything else? Okay, then let's close with a prayer. Let us pray. Teacher God, you reveal your name and your dream, and you invite us to take hold of both. Your wilderness lessons strip away the distractions and show us we are connected to one another and to you. You give our hands the good work of feeding one another in freedom and fairness. You give our bodies and souls the great gift of Sabbath rest. You invite us into friendship with you, with one another, and with the natural world. Give us courage to act with justice, the wisdom to live simply, and the humility to rest in your grace. We pray for all who are hungry. We pray for those whose lives are clouded by the uncertainties of poverty and want. We pray for those made fearful as they hoard food and wealth and power. We give thanks for your manna, and we ask for your mercy. Amen.
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 Thank you very much.
Pastor.
We'll see you all next time.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye now.
Bye. Have a
Bye.
good day.